The 70s was a restive time for all of the Northeast. Separatist movements dotted the landscape from Assam to Tripura and Mizoram to Nagaland. There was hardly a part of the Northeast that was peaceful, at least the way we know it today. Add to this, Bangladesh, which was a newly independent nation back then, was still suffering from the effects of brutal occupation and thousands of people staring at an uncertain future. And the Northeast resembled a tinderbox. The influx of refugees to the Northeast, and especially Assam and Tripura, made several of the indigenous communities uncomfortable, who, let us not forget, were also parallelly fighting to retain their lands and property from all outsiders, Indians or otherwise. The result, Mandai massacre. My name is Kalyan Deb, and this week we will talk about the massacre you may have not heard of. Pursuing for months.
A village of Assam
In the 75th Independence Day,
While most of the Northeasterners and several mainlanders remember and acknowledge the gruesome Nellie massacre of 1983, few know of the Mandai massacre, which took place this month 42 years ago and left hundreds, mostly Bengali-speaking people, dead. The Mandai massacre in Tripura, along with Nellie in Assam, were two of the biggest anti-Bengali massacres in the Northeast, and both exposed the brutal ethnic fault lines that have, one could argue, remained in place since. Until June 7, 1980, Mandai hardly featured on any maps. It was just a regular village located about 34 kilometers from the capital Agartala. But post-June, its claim to fame, like Nellie, was the massacre that took place in the region. To understand what happened on June 8, we will have to go back a few months and even a few years. As mentioned earlier, the independence of Bangladesh and the violence that preceded and followed it left thousands of refugees looking for greener, safer pastures. Most, if not all, made a beeline for three Bengali-speaking states in East India: West Bengal, Assam and Tripura. But unlike, say, West Bengal, where, of course, Bengalis were and are in majority, the same could not be said of Assam and definitely not Tripura, making it, to put it simply, a complicated relationship. Ever since India's independence, the region now known as Tripura had seen Bengalis, mostly Hindus, arrive, but mainly believed that after 1971, the trickle turned into a downpour. Also, let us not forget that unlike Bengali as an identity, each tribe had their own culture and lifestyle. Throw in the sizable economic and social disparity between the Bengali community and the indigenous communities. The simmering tensions between communities soon began emerging at the political level too. And that is where one could say the seeds of the June 8 massacre were sowed. The Indigenous People's Front of Tripura and the Tripura Motha are two of the major political parties representing the indigenous community interests in Tripura. However, in the 70s, it was the Tripura Upajati Juba Samiti which had taken the role of representing the state's indigenous parties. Interestingly, the most important demand of TUJS was for an autonomous district council, commonplace now across the Northeast, but a much more contentious issue back then. The state government was under the Communist Party of India Marxist, but another political outfit, Amra Bengali, was the biggest opponent of TUJS. This party believed that if TUJS's demands were approved, it would endanger the Bengali community's properties. Indigenous people fighting for more right versus an outsider community trying to hold on to what they have. This was only going one way. On June 1, 1980, TUJS called a shutdown in Old Mandwi, which continued till June 6. Amid the ongoing strike, 3 TUJS volunteers reportedly disappeared from Amarpur in Gomati District of Tripura while picketing in support of the bandh. Shortly after the incident, one tribal fruit trader was attacked at Lembucherra market, located on the outskirts of Agartala city. The tensions soon boiled over. According to eyewitnesses, arson, looting and attacks on non-tribal areas dominated the headlines of June 6 and June 7, and then came June 8. That day, eyewitnesses say Bengali families, anticipating further escalation and a worsening law and order situation, were evacuating the village when an armed, angry mob launched the attack. Hours later, 225 people had been butchered. Many people say the official figure of 225 declared by the state government was way off the mark, and that the real figure stands above 400. According to several media reports, this was the deadliest massacre in Tripura's history, and when such a massacre takes place, it often takes years, if not decades, to return to normalcy. Of course, there were calls for justice and punishment for the accused. But let's not forget, this is Tripura in the 80s. The West Tripura and Sepahijala district Displaced Welfare Committee came into being to raise demands for the grief-stricken displaced families. In the aftermath, over 100 families were settled in Buraka, about 14 kilometers from Mandai, but the families quickly moved to other parts of Tripura. Sajal Poddar, secretary of the aforementioned committee, said that ethnic tensions and the resulting insurgency displaced over 6,500 families in Tripura. He says that all these families received no support from the government and have managed on their own and ended up in areas like Kamalsagar, Bishalgarh, Golaghati, Ranir Bazar and Mazlishpur of Sepahijala and West Tripura. Shortly after the massacre, the central government constituted an inquiry committee led by Dinesh Singh. The Dinesh Singh committee submitted its report at the beginning of 1981. The final report submitted by this committee laid stress on the economic development of the tribals and constitutional safeguards for their rights on land and autonomy. Unfortunately, the second left-front government, headed by Nripen Chakrabarti, did not accept the report only because it had made mildly critical comments on the failure of the state government to prevent the ethnic riots in 1979 and 1980. However, the formation of ADC in January 1982 and its subsequent conversion to one based on the 6th schedule of the constitution fulfilled the basic political demands of the indigenous community. While it would be wrong to say that ethnic fault lines remain as strong as in the 70s and 80s, one can also not say that they are a thing of the past. The political landscape of Tripura remains divided by the tribal versus non-tribal dichotomy. The tribals have almost 2/3 of Tripura's landscape, but only 1/3 of the population. Of the 60 seats in the Tripura Assembly, the non-tribal seats come to 40. Consequently, the power remains largely in the hands of the Bengali population. Although, thanks to the IPFT and Tripura, Tripura's indigenous population now enjoys more representation than ever. And while the state may remain divided ethnically, political parties, at least on the surface, do not outrightly seek to divide the state. The BJP, CPIM, Congress and even TMC maintain that the state has to progress as one, and even Tripura Motha, which has a base almost exclusively in the tribal region, has time and again reiterated that they have no hostility towards the Bengali population. That has, however, not stopped them from demanding the NRC process on the lines of Assam and kicking out intruders. This is unlikely to be accepted or agreed upon by the Bengali population of the state. However, for now at least, it is unlikely that NRC will take place in Tripura. But then, stranger things have happened in the past. For now though, it seems that the indigenous and non-indigenous people of Tripura have settled their differences to a large extent. And we are glad because no one would want a repeat of what happened that fateful day on June 8, 1980.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to EastMojo. For any queries, put them down in the comments section below and press on the bell icon for notifications.